you're joining us for the first time, my name is Tony. I run the growth practice here at Mucker, which just basically means I spend most of my time working with our founders on helping them scale their startup, focusing on go-to-market and whatnot. We do these sessions about once a month where we talk about a certain topic and go deep into how to do various parts of go-to-market, how to formulate your pitch deck, how to think about fundraising, how to think about using AI even. But today we are going to be talking about enterprise sales. One quick thing, if you are new, Mucker, we are an early stage VC firm. We invest at the seed and Series A stages all across North America. We even have some portfolio companies in other parts of the world. And we invest in all different types of companies. So if you are looking for additional help, definitely take a look at our website. We also run an accelerator program that can be participated in remotely. So you don't have to be near one of our offices if you want to participate. Okay, enough about me and Mucker. I want to introduce our speaker for today, David Mackay. He's the managing director at D9Y. He's also one of our operating experts. And for those of you unfamiliar with that program, our operating experts are an external group of people that make themselves available to our portfolio companies for advice, and they are domain experts in a particular area. In this case, David being an enterprise sales expert. He's been doing this for a number of years now. But David, welcome. I'll turn it over to you and let's get started.
Thanks. A number of years is a very polite way of saying a long time. So thanks for not calling out the age. So yeah, I'll just start off with a little bit of my background just to set the context, and then we'll dive right in. I've been very fortunate in my career. I was in the right place in the right time when I joined a company called Omniture, which was subsequently acquired by Adobe. And I went through 14 acquisitions there, and some 10 years later, I was running a $200 million line of business. And my teams were working with some really exciting accounts at JP Morgan, Apple, Microsoft, GM, Marriott, Disney, all on multi-million dollar deals. In fact, one of my sales reps had a quota, an annual quota of $17 million deal, $17 million a year. I worked on the two biggest deals that we had done at the time, 25 million and 32 million. Those were GM and Ford back then. After 14 acquisitions, what I came out of it with was a really great set of schemata that I've been able to take to some of my future roles. So at Oracle, I also focused on the enterprise business there. Not a lot to say except that I learned how a culture can really hold you back. Or then I moved on to Hootsuite, led the global enterprise business, and I've also done two Series A's, one which had an exit a few years ago. At D9Y, as Tony mentioned, I'm working with early stage companies, typically pre-seed or seed, on helping them get their GTM strategy solidified, especially if they're working with high value solutions and trying to penetrate the enterprise customer segment. On the personal front, I'm actually a stone's throw from the Mucker office here in Los Angeles. I'm in Venice Beach. I also have a working farm up in Canada, so I was looking at the locations. So shout out to anyone on Westside LA, and also shout out to the Toronto folks. I saw Dave Mason, and then there were a couple others that were up there. Great to see you on. I have a couple of things that keep me busy. My dogs, as you see there, the one on the left is a pro level sheep herder. The one on the right is a novice in training. And the one in the middle is a dropout who didn't like sheep and now visits patients in the local hospital. And I also am working on my master's beekeeping at Cornell. I've been doing that for about 10 years now. And yeah, like Jason Statham. So typically I get called when companies are at inflection points or when something's not really working right. Yeah, should we get started? Dive into the content, Tony?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so I wasn't allowed to call this what I wanted to, which was avoiding self-inflicted wounds or conquering the mid-funnel death spiral. But what I did settle on is the David Mackay School for founders who can't sell good and who want to learn to do good, to do other stuff good too. And if you get the reference, put it in the chat, because then I know I'm not the only old person here. Yes. So the session goal today is I want you to walk away with a few things that you can use immediately, like literally leave the session and put these things into practice. A lot of the topics to go deep could be sessions in their own right, But my goal here is if you can move one deal faster, close one more deal, unstick a stuck deal, then I'll be happy. And I hope it's worth the time here. The agenda is pretty straightforward. We'll talk a bit about the challenges, how we get better at dealing with those challenges, and then specifically about pilot execution. Why do we struggle with enterprise customers? And it's messy. First off, you have a tough starting point. Most of you on the phone are founders, probably products that haven't been built before, new product categories. You're not selling a replacement, so there's no budget line item for your product. There's probably a pretty vague understanding at the customer of where your product might even sit within the organization or who has responsibility for it. The need is unknown because the customer might be solution unaware or even problem unaware. So they don't even know that it's a problem that can be solved, much less a solution that there's a solution around that can solve that problem. And there's no real timing because they don't even know you exist yet. So those would have been like normal qualification questions in a typical enterprise sale. So you're starting from a pretty tough spot. And then selling to enterprise is hard. They're large, complex organizations. There are multiple stakeholders they all have diverse motivations. There are a lot of people who have opinions and a lot of people who can say no. And we also know now that most of the buying is done by consensus or by committee with an average of 5 to 9 people who are involved in the decisions. In fact, Forrester says that 78% of companies have reported that the hardest part of acquiring new technology is building consensus in the organization. So that's a huge hurdle to get over. And then the process, aside from the RFIs and the RFPs, there's all sorts of sub-processes like the procurement process, security, privacy, budgeting, finance, IT deep dives, change management. It just goes on with all the processes that you have to manage as a small company. And that's a lot different than selling into small business, where it's a lot more about problem solution, right? But you have a nail that needs to be hit, we have a hammer. It's pretty straightforward. But in the enterprise, that hammer has to connect to the priorities of the customer, show value, deliver outcomes across a broad set of stakeholders, and do it in a risk-averse way. Just for fun to illustrate, I happen to know a lot about hammers because I spend most of my free time fixing fence boards. So my title is Infrastructure Assembly Specialist. And I had a good hammer, but I needed a gooder one because I was trying to pound 4-inch nails into 2-inch boards. So I went to the store and I talked to the salesperson, and he showed me a very robust fastening solution that solved my problem. And it was less than $50. It was in my direct spending discretion. All good. I had a problem, salesperson had a solution, was it within my budget, easy peasy. And that's the one I went with. It works really good. It's a great hammer. But the salesperson also showed me another solution, one that I really knew would double my productivity, but it was unbudgeted. And it was awesome. The salesperson and I, we went out for lunch and talked about it for an hour about all the great features of this thing. And when I went back, I knew I had to build consensus within my org. So I showed my facilities manager, AKA daughter, and she thought it was awesome too, because she knew that if I got this hammer, she wouldn't have to do any fence mending. So she was on side with supporting the purchase, but it's $450. But it's the leading fence board fastening solution in the market. This is Gartner Magic Quadrant stuff. But I had business value, fewer wasted nails. I was going to take fewer breaks. I'd finish this thing way faster. I had personal value. I wouldn't be out there as long. My arm wouldn't be tired. I could go golf later and have no issues. But the problem was the seller didn't establish value at the CFO level, AKA wife. The salesperson sold only to me and didn't connect it to what her priorities were. And her priorities were not building fences. Her priorities were expanding the land for the vegetable garden. And this happens a lot. So it's a metaphor for what happens in these enterprise sales. You've got a champion, you get excited about it, everyone's excited, but there's a gigantic disconnect in the priorities for other people in the organization, and the deal gets derailed. I hope that was a good analogy. Thumbs up or thumbs down would be
You mean
good.
you can't just say it's also powered by an AI agent?
Yeah, oh, you know what? I didn't even think about that one. That would have been good too. And speaking of which, if you hear stuff while I'm talking and it resonates, you can put me IRL in the chat. If you think I'm off the rails, you can just put WTF too. Okay, and moving on. So I have this thing I call the symptom gallery. So tell me if these are some things that you've heard before. You had a great meeting, some great discussions, an awesome demo, and now crickets. We've been having great discussions around the tech, but it's not translating into deals. You had some great early pipeline, but now it's waning and delay after delay, not just the procurement process, but these deals are dragging on forever. And you get as far as you think you can, but you just can't get it across the line. So trying to figure out what's going on here. And you may hear statements like this. This is my favorite one, and we're going to talk about this 3 times. We love your product. Can we reconnect in a few months because we're in the middle of our X implementation? Sounds good, but it's not. Or this one's a soul killer. Thanks for the demo. We know what you do now, and we'll call you when we're ready for it. Or I'm having trouble finding time. Everyone's schedule is crazy. How's your calendar next month? Or bear with us, we're still discussing internally. Really painful things. It's all common stuff. The good news is it's all your fault. So I'm being a little comic book here, but it's just a way of pointing out that a lot of this is solvable with some pretty easy tactics. Of course, there are going to be prospects that don't work out for very valid reasons, but there's a lot of stuff here that's within our control that we're going to try and tackle today. And by the way, Tony, I'm sorry, but I don't know if this presentation is 20 minutes or 2 hours. I hope it works out. You're not alone in this, right? A lot of people struggle with deals inexplicably stalling mid-sales cycle or right at the finish line. And part of it is because enterprise sales has a problem, and that is that it needs to modernize. And I'm not going to go into this because I promise this is about tactics today, not theory. But just very briefly, back in the day, we had this thing that we called solution sales. It was all about finding a problem and blowing it out of proportion. And it was all about questioning tactics and connecting to a problem at a practitioner level. Fine. Most companies have moved on to what we would call consultative sales, and it's a little better about understanding the landscape in the organization, selling to outcomes, maybe talking about ROI, understanding power structures, things like that. That's where most people sell right now. Then there's what I'm calling strategic sales, and that's a lot more about how we're going to partner together over the long run to make the customer successful. And then there is something coming that I will call the next evolution, but that's for another day. The part that I want you to take away today, or one of the key things, is orienting around customer priorities, right? And I will explain how we do that further in. So my big first statement of the day is most closing problems or problems in the middle of the sales process are actually opening problems. They're self-inflicted wounds that we've got at the beginning of the sales process because we didn't start off on the right foot. We didn't set the right expectations and we didn't take control of the sales process and so on. The typical sales process that I see is a trap. And I'll go through this and I guess I'll just dive in. How does this look? So the typical sales process, get a meeting, put an SDR on it, get a meeting, in that meeting, do a brief discovery, thank God we got the meeting, and then convince them to see a demo. In the demo, let's show them the demo and we're going to blow them away because it's so good and we're going to hope that they want to do a pilot. Often the customer might say, just show me the demo. In the pilot, I don't know why we're doing a pilot yet, but we're going to do a pilot and we're going to cross our fingers and hope that they're so blown away that they're going to want to move to a long-term contract. Then we give them a proposal and then we cross our fingers and pray. That, I see this time and time and time again. This is the way it generally rolls. Of course, little success because we've had no discussion of value and we've had no connection to what's important to them. So basically, it would be pure luck if you connect to something that resonates with them. This is where that statement comes in. Thanks for the demo. We know what you do and we'll call you when we're ready. But it could be worse. And here's this little story of a little success story. So I swear this was a documented sales process at a company I worked at, but it actually got worse. The CEO had different people for each step of the process. So an SDR got the meeting and did a discovery. Then a demo guy did the demonstration meeting. And then there was something called a deal runner, like a showrunner in TV, who ran the pilot and then got it up to a proposal level. And then if they actually wanted to negotiate, there was a closer. It was I can't even right now. But the success story is, and here's the misery part for them. They went 4 years after a $20 million Series A and hadn't broken $1 million in ARR.
Jeez.
Ouch. But they hit 7 million after I got connected with them. They hit 7 million in 12 months and 15 million in 24 months. And how? It was simply by changing the process to focus on value and rethinking how they were going about their pilots. So complete turnaround. Some common unforced errors. So I'm going to try to hit most of these off, but we'll touch on taking control of the process, how we can improve discovery, how we can talk about value or what the impact of success looks like for customers, avoiding feature-centric conversations, getting out of single-threaded deals, expanding our footprint, and my favorite, which I call the technical founder trap. And we'll get to that in a sec. Okay, so how do we get better at all this stuff? The first thing, just a little principle, just a personal philosophy of mine. Not everything has to be a massive step forward. You can make huge differences with a lot of little improvements. And so I have this concept that I call continuously compounding incremental gains. If you can continue to make just little tweaks in what you do every day you go out, every meeting you're in, if you improve it by just a bit, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself running great meetings. It's a good concept. So here we're not going to talk about a big theory thing. This isn't a dissertation of sales methodologies. I'm not going to talk like why MEDDIC is not really a sales methodology. It's a qualification framework. We'll skip all that fluff. So let's dive right into it. So getting better at owning the process, super important, because if you let the customer lead you through, their process is designed to review features. If you drive the process, your process should be designed to understand their goals and establish value by connecting your solution to those goals. It's a much different and a more strategic conversation and a more valuable conversation for both of you. If they drive the process, you're going to get pushed into that sales flow that I just showed you. And many of you are defining new categories, which means you have to lead the conversation with vision. And oops, forgot to build. But there's a saying that's been in software forever: own the process, own the deal. But what I mean by vision, and again, a quick sidestep into something that smells of theory, but I won't, I promise. I have this thing I call the winning growth formula. There are 3 parts. There is, you have to have a product that works, you have to have a post-sale framework that makes the customer successful, and you have to have a strong point of view about how this product is going to evolve over time and how that you are going to help the customer advance their business as a result. That is the vision, the product category and strategy. It's all wrapped in the go-to-market framework. The reason this is important is because customers buy what you do now, but especially if you're defining a new category, you also have to get them to buy into your vision of how you're going to help them evolve the business over time. They're buying now and they're buying your future. How do we get back to, in a book recommendation, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Fantastic book. Even if you read the first half, it's really good and really applicable to current day. All right, so let's move on to control the process. This thing I'm about to tell you is one of the biggest sleeper wins I can possibly give you. You're gonna think it's totally stupid, but I promise you, this is the best thing that you can do to improve. It's about agendas. This is a typical agenda that I see all the time when people are selling to me. They send me an agenda for a meeting. They say, let's do introductions. I'll give you a company overview, a demo, and then we'll talk about next steps. I don't even know why they send it. It's totally useless. A next gen agenda, you can actually use it as a starting point in the discovery process. You can take control of the conversation early. You can direct the flow of how these engagements are going to go. And you can set expectations with the customer around their participation. So you're not into these unilateral, just going in and spewing information about your company, but actually having a conversation with them. And it allows you to differentiate because it shows your level of professionalism is way above everybody else. So how does it look? Each one of these things is important. If you name the attendees on the agenda, that gives the customer a chance to validate. Either, oh, you're missing this important person that's attending, or you put 5 people on here, but it's actually just me. Helps really understand the context. Second thing is the context. How did we get here? Our understanding of the situation so far is X, or we've had conversations with these 5 people and this is what we've learned. Really important for the newbies that are coming into the session. And meeting goals. So specifically defining, what does the customer want to get out of the meeting? Not you. What are they hoping to accomplish? And it could be multiple goals, 5 goals. And the topics. We want the customer to talk. So give them agenda topics, right? So tell us about the project background. How did you get to this point? Why are we having this conversation? What are the things that are important in this project? What have you looked at also? What other solutions have you looked at or options for solving this problem? So the goal is get the customer talking. I will explicitly send them questions that I'm going to ask them in the session so they know up front and they're prepared, and then give them a chance to tell us what they want. I have seen this turn into, I've had sales reps put this in a Google Doc and customers redline it with things like, do not say that word or we're going down a 20-minute rabbit hole. So it's super powerful. Use it all the time. And I swear it will help you in ways that you can't even imagine. I'm a huge proponent of this, and there's actually a book, it's out of print, called Stop Selling and Do Something Valuable. You can still get it on Amazon. Read chapters 1 to 8 and 10 and 14. I promise you, you'll be reading it thinking this is the goofiest book I've ever read, but the concept is strong.
Hey, David, quick question about that structure for the approach for the agenda. Do you use that for the initial call or discover it only, or do you take that framework for all subsequent meetings?
Every time I have a chance to use an agenda, I will. And in the book, the author says, even for social situations. And when I first did it, I was going out for lunch with a client and I had a few things that we needed to talk about. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this out. So I sent the agenda in advance. We sit down, we're having lunch, we're chatting, it's social. We get halfway through the lunch and the guy reaches into his pocket and pulls out this crinkly piece of paper and smooths it out on the table and says, so you had some things you wanted to talk about. And I said, wow, it worked. So anytime, the power in this thing is it gives you the opportunity to define the rules of engagement for that next meeting, what your expectations are of them, what you're prepared to do. And if they disconnect, if they're not connected, then you can get in front of that before you walk into the meeting. I love it for first meetings because I don't want to go in and have them just sit back in their chair and say, okay, so tell us what you guys do. And then, yeah, I just want to see the demo. Totally useless. But if we go in with the expectation that no, this is a different product category and there are reasons why we're having this conversation, it's way more powerful.
Awesome.
Okay, improving discovery, better discovery. So this is something that happens often. I see it all the time. A client shows up and says, hey, we're looking for a solution that does X, Y, Z. And your reaction is to say, awesome, our solution does that. Let me show you. Stop doing that, please, because it's a trap, right? You're going to get stuck in a feature conversation and it might not even be about the right problem. So how do we do it better? First thing is pause. You want to say, yep, we can do that. Can I ask you a question? Okay, because there's some things you need to understand. Why are they looking? How does it connect to their broader goals? What problems are they hoping to resolve? What's their motivation? Are you just column fodder in an RFP? Have they already decided who they want? They're just comparison shopping? How did they get to this point in the process? And they may have misdiagnosed the root causes. That's the important part because you may uncover something that's more important. And you also may have a vision that gives them better options. So you owe it to them to have a conversation around why are they doing this? Okay, and so questions that you might use are things like, so what's changed in your business that has sent you down this path? Or can you walk me through how it happens today? I know you told me what you want to do now, but what's happening today? So really basic stuff, but you want to get to those root causes. So some help on questioning here. I have a framework that I call the IER questioning. So it's got three parts: initiate, expand, and reconcile. Initiate are the open-ended questions. All right, so like on the previous thing, so what prompted you to look into this type of solution? What are some of the challenges you're having with it right now? And don't forget the ultimate aphrodisiac. I took this from Scott Galloway. He was giving dating advice to his sons. The follow-on question. When someone says, we're really struggling with X. Oh, fascinating. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Why is that X such a problem? Super powerful. And I guarantee you, if you use it in your dating life, what's your favorite color? Blue. Oh, what is it about blue that you really like? I promise you, expand. These are the questions that you use to direct the conversation to the powerful parts of your solution or the strongest, most competitive parts of your situation. Okay, so it sounds something like, okay, so you've told me about all these problems that you're having. Many of our customers have also said they have a problem with X. Have you also seen this? And when they say, yes, actually we have, that's awesome because then you've just directed them towards something that you do really well. That's an expand the conversation question. Yes, no. And then the reconcile is wrapping it all up. So let me just repeat back what I've heard. I've heard you say a little bit about this problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. Does that sound right? And they're going to say, yeah. And then there's the next beauty I'm going to give you. This is another gem. It's called clean the plate. And the question is very simple. Is there anything else? And then stop talking. Because inevitably, there is a gem that comes up that they say, you know what, I almost forgot, but we have this other thing. Those are diamonds that you can uncover at that time. So it's called clean the plate. Is there anything else? And you can use that in when you're talking about their objectives, about the problems, about the solution, the power, whatever it is. It's a great question. Okay, so discovery, what do we need to know? Better discovery. So the first thing is, this is not an interrogation, right? It's a business conversation. Use your curiosity, okay? Remember, the agenda can set the tone here about the discovery, okay? What we're looking for is we need to understand their goals and their priorities, which are different at each level. The CEO's priorities are different than the manager's priorities. Their problems, again, they're different at different levels. Options that they've considered for this particular problem, and power structure, who's involved, and so on. So we need to get to some of those more important deals on the mechanics and the qualification. Related, you have two ways that you can really establish value that you need to dig into with the discovery. The first is the ideal outcome is that you understand their priorities, and you can find a way to connect your solution to those priorities and help them resolve those priorities. Super powerful. The other is you identify opportunities where you can help expand their thinking because of your vision around the product category. And the first one is connected to a methodology called value selling. The other one is challenger sale, just for the record. But two very powerful ways that you can pursue a strategic conversation with the customer. On questioning, I'm sure a lot of you have heard the more questions you ask, the better. It's not true. The more questions you ask, the lower your close rate. It's more important that you have a conversation that's natural, that has the conversations embedded into it. But just be careful, because if you're interrogating, this is what's going to happen. Your close rate's going to go down. Okay.
David, quick question. So
Yep.
I see this a lot with the founders, and actually this came from Daniel, who I work with. And the question is, the one of your earlier slides, you're talking about how to run a better discovery and asking about the problems. What do you do in situations where, and this happens a lot when companies and startups are just founders are just doing pure outbound, and they're just trying to, again, just try to get a foot in the door and get an initial meeting. And a prospect says, okay, I'll take a meeting. And in that first call, because the founder initiated that meeting, how do you address or run that discovery if there is no stated intent, if that makes sense, right? So how do you address that?
The first thing is they took the meeting for a reason. I want to understand why. What was it that interested them in the conversation? Using agendas too is a powerful thing, right? You can get in front of that. But there's also a piece that we're not going to cover here, and that's in how you can talk about your company. Instead of coming in and saying, and they said, just run through your company, tell me about yourself. Instead of saying we were founded in 2024 and we were funded by Mucker and blah, 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 you can come in and say, look, there's this dynamic happening in the marketplace. It's creating a problem. That problem is urgent and important. It's been hard to solve for these variety of problems or variety of reasons. This is where we come in. And so companies tend to call us when they are having these types of problems and then move on. So then you're trying to turn it into a discussion of the category and the options and maybe your vision around where that category is going, but whole strategy around that. But my first question would be, why did you want to meet? Or why did you agree? Did we just browbeat you into meeting? Which happens. So moving on, there is this concept called happy ears that salespeople all know about. And basically what it means is you're only hearing the good things. And it can be really troublesome. So you have to get good at evaluating what you're hearing. Some people call it being nose blind, like you can't smell the inside of your own house. So here's an example. We love your product. Can we connect in a few months? We're in the middle of a CRM project, really important. So you did an amazing demo. It was so good, people were standing up cheering. They love it. They just need to connect later. Okay, so what I hear from the sales rep, this is like, I swear I could have taken this out of a forecast call recording. They love our product. They said they want to work with us. The champion texts me all the time. I know when the kids' birthdays are. I did an ROI, it was like 2,000%, but they've just got all their resources tied up with a big donut festival and asked us if we could come back in a couple of months. She said it's all hands on deck. Okay, so the sales rep thinks it's awesome because they text all the time. So this is, I said you like founder, but it should say AE and me, right? Because I'm seeing through this, because what I'm hearing is, the first thing is a continuance versus an advance. A continuance is something where it's like, yep, this is good, let's talk again in a couple of weeks. It just means another 2 weeks in the sales process. An advance means the process has moved forward. So if someone gives you a continuance like that, my reaction is to say, okay, so what are we gonna do when we get back together in a couple of months? You gotta turn it into an advance to actually move the ball forward. So who's gonna be in that meeting with us? What should we prepare? And so on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when I hear that they love us, but they just can't fit it in right now, it means either we haven't established value, or we're not connected to the person who can reprioritize those resources because our project is so valuable. So we have some more selling to do if that's the case. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our symptom list from a little bit earlier, and this is the second hot take leading into my favorite topic, the technical founder trap. And the trap is that you fall deeply in love with your own stuff. And it's super common. Your technology is your baby, you're proud of it, you want to talk about it, you love what it can do, it does a million things, you're excited about the impact, you have amazing conversations and demos because you're so excited about it, and you can show everything and it's just wonderful, but it's not leading to wins. Why is it happening? Because you're getting connected with people, typically innovators or early adopters in the marketing adoption curve, that are also excited about new technology. And these are deeply gratifying conversations for both of you because your interest is mirrored. Just like my hammer conversation, I went out for lunch and talked about hammers. It's your safe place. You could talk all day long about your product, but interest is not commitment. Oops, bad salesperson. Okay, because it's features. That's what you're getting stuck on. Maybe some problem discussion, but mostly features. And then another really important thing is the champion might not be empowered to act, that person that you're talking to, or maybe they don't want to act. Maybe they're just bored. So you have to get more comfortable at moving the conversations to something around outcomes and business impact. And you have to get comfortable with the process and pushing the process part of the conversation. So let's connect on value, talk about value just very quickly. So first, just from that last slide, 2,000% ROI sounds amazing. But a side note on ROI, it doesn't work. Actually focusing on ROI decreases your success. This is a Gong statistic from Gong. Sellers that focus on ROI have lower win rates than those that don't. And the reason is because ROI is disconnected from what really matters, the impact of success. What does the person that you're trying to sell to really want to get done? ROI might not even be part of it. You have to understand what the true impact of success is, what they want to see, and ROI is often not it. I can't think of the last time I did an ROI exercise. Okay, types of value. There are actually 3 types of value that you need to be aware of. One is business value. So that's the impact of success. So if this goes well, we put our product in and it does what it's supposed to do, how will it positively affect the key metrics that you're concerned about? That's a business value. Personal value is maybe you're talking to someone who's spending 20 manual hours a week on this thing and just wants to get home and play with their dog. That's personal value. And then there's professional value, and that's the insights that you can bring to the company that can actually help these people expand their thinking and their approaches. All are valuable, all are important when you're having the value conversation, valuable, no pun intended. And the other important thing is value is different for every single contact, especially the personal value. Okay, how are we doing on time, Tony? Like I wasn't joking when I said that I was no idea.
We could talk about this all day. We have about, let's go for 15 minutes.
That much? Oh, okay, good. Okay, getting better at avoiding single-threaded deals. So as a founder, often you get connected with the champion, you have those wonderful conversations, they're easy, they're fun, but they don't go anywhere. It's consistent with the founder trap. It's a safe and comfortable conversation. But the risks of getting stuck with your champions are Like they're super important. And in some cases, you need the champion because you're driving something that the company has never seen before. So you need someone to pick that up and help you. But champions can have their own internal politics and interests, which might not be aligned with the corporate ones. I think I said this earlier. They might just be lonely. I've had that. They may never have any interest in actually doing anything to make this into a purchase. And they could turn over, they could leave the company, they could get fired. So it's really risky. And we know there's a stat that multi-threaded deals have a 40 to 130% better conversion rate in complex deals. So sellers often mistake enthusiasm for organizational commitment, but there are a lot of people who can say no. So you need to understand the goals of the others. So some tactics. One that I love
David,
is
let
called.
me ask a question on champions, and you might actually be answering this in the tactics section. But so, and this was a question earlier that I didn't get a chance to ask from the audience, which is, what if the champion won't help with moving the deal moving forward with the sales process, such as introducing the key decision makers or economic buyer, basically being the internal person to step up to bat? And stepping back, like a broader question is, how do you know that you found the right person as a champion?
So those are two hard questions. So the first one I would say is if you have a champion who is not willing to expose you to the rest of the company, there is a part in here where I say, how do you make the champion into a collaborator, right? Like, how do you get them to a point where you say, look, you want this, I want this, let's put a strategy together around how we can start to socialize this through the organization. That's, you've got a true champion when. But if they don't want to do any of that stuff, then I think you're in the lonely category. So you have to ask some hard questions and there are techniques, right? Like expanding the footprint, you might have a question like, so who else would usually get involved with this type of technology decision? So there are some questioning lines that you can ask, but if they're gonna be a blocker, then they're not a champion. You can't be a blocker and a champion. And I forgot the second question, but
I think you covered it. It's how do you actually define or find the right champion?
yeah.
If you
And
go through the question.
and frankly, a lot of it's luck in navigating, and then you get to have a conversation with someone and they get it. But part of it is focusing on if you understand that person's priorities, what's on their plate, what do they have to deliver this year, and some of the problems that are stopping them from doing that, and you can help them solve those problems and get to their priorities, you're going to have a champion. So it's
Yeah,
about understanding everyone's priorities and problems and so on, and they're different for every level, as I've said.
great. And
Okay,
we have a question that just came in related to this from Dan. How long do you go before you go above or around your champion?
I'm trying to go, and I'm about to talk about this. I'm trying to
Cool.
go spread out as fast as possible. There's no sense waiting, right? The
Yep.
faster we can expand the conversation, the better. And if it's an issue where there's a blocker and it becomes obvious that they're a blocker, then I have no reservations about starting to reach out to other people around the organization that without that person's help or going over their head or whatever you want to call it. Because if they're not going to help you, what's the risk, right? You're not going anywhere anyway. So what's the risk? You talk to somebody else and that person gets mad, you're still in the same place. So all right, so some tactics around single-threaded deals and things. One good thing is just a general deal practice, even if you're not single-threaded, is triangulation, right? Triangulation is confirming what you hear from one person with another. So it's like sitting down, Sue says that she owns the budget for this and can sign off, and you go and sit down with Mary and you say, yeah, this all sounds good. Mary said that she's got the budget and can sign off on that. Or sorry, Sue says that, and Mary says, what? No, she's on crack. She can't do that without two levels up. Okay, that's triangulation, right? So you're trying to make sure you're getting the truth, not the story that one person wants you to hear. The relationship map. So this is map out the people that you're connected with and their disposition. Do they like you? Are they neutral? Do they hate you? And what's your strategy for getting them all into the like you part? And I have a template that I'd be happy to share with people if you want to connect with me after. The 3D conversations. So if you're talking to this person in the middle here, you've got to get up to the senior people. You've also got to get down to the practitioners, and you've got to go lateral. Any way that you can go to expand the conversation is valuable. One little tactic that I'll share here is if you do get to the executive, I've had someone call it the executive return ticket. When you get a chance to have a conversation with them, there's a really powerful line, which is, this has really been a great conversation. I would love to check in with you in a couple of weeks on the status of the project. Do you mind if I reach out to you? It's like a return ticket. It's booking your return ticket in advance. So you're not trying 2 weeks later trying to renegotiate to go back to see that person again. I've mentioned individual priorities. I did mention this too. The champion is the co-architect, right? So if they want it and you want it, try to figure out how to build the strategy around all of these things that you have to do to get the deal done. And then the final one, this is a little, I don't know what the word is in my head, but you have to be careful. But pilots, if you're having trouble getting other stakeholders into it, pilots can sometimes be the way, because then you bring in the other stakeholders by nature because they have to participate. But you have to be really careful about how you do it, right? Because you don't want to do a pilot for nothing. Okay, procurement, I'm just going to hit on this really quickly. My horror story, like procurement is miserable, can be miserable, can be great also. My record for miserableness is a 14-hour legal call. I was at a ski camp with my kids sitting in a hotel room on the phone for 14 hours with lawyers and procurement. And second place was I was hung up on by a procurement person on Christmas Eve, who then subsequently sent an email to my CEO who told me how to tell him how unprofessional I was. So it can be pretty miserable. But the good thing is if you're engaged, that's a good signal, right? If they're putting you into procurement, that's a good sign. But if it's not moving along, that's a sign that the value is weak, right? Because if the value is strong, you would have your executive stakeholder or executive sponsor jumping up and down that they haven't got their project moving through procurement. They're going to be freaking out. So that's why executive relationships are critical when it comes to procurement, because you need to be able to call them and say, hey, this thing isn't moving in procurement, we're stuck, can you help us out? And they're going to get on the phone and yell at the procurement person. Engage early, it's helpful. And where possible, they have priorities and problems and motivations and value. Try to understand those. And when in doubt, build buffer into your proposals. Okay. And a big problem that, of course, we all hear about is we get stuck, we get ghosted. We've had great conversations and then nothing, crickets. Okay, so this is the strategy. Customer's not responsive, now what? Okay, you can strategically use anxiety questions, but carefully, because if you dial up the fear and uncertainty, they will retreat because people avoid fear and uncertainty. But the occasional anxiety question about what happens if we don't get this going, it can be powerful. More importantly, re-anchor on the positive things that you've all agreed on. De-risk the change. That's where a pilot could come in handy. Look, I know this is a big change and it seems like a lot of risk. Why don't we do a small scale pilot or rollout just to start, just to get your feet wet. Do not repitch. Do not try to start selling again. They've already heard it. And even then, this is a fun one too, preemptive. At the beginning of the sales process, you can say, hey, look, if you decide that this isn't for you, instead of just ghosting me, can you just let me know? And my promise to you in return is I'm not trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. If this doesn't fit, I'm not going to browbeat you into trying to do it. Okay? It's just setting the social contract in advance. Okay, so here's an email structure that you can use that I've literally last week I had someone do this and he got re-engaged with the client. It was awesome. 3 sections. Okay, a reason to re-engage and something good, right? I saw your post on LinkedIn about the whatever, and it has to be authentic, not some looks like an AI generated thing. Then here's the positive part. From our discussions, we know that goal 1 was important to you. You really were keen on this capability. This was the solution that you felt you wanted to do. No selling here, not we can do this for you. And then the next steps that you had agreed with them. And then ask them how would they suggest that you proceed. Okay, you're not selling, you're just restating all of the positive things and some things that you would agree that you were going to do. I've seen it work a number of times. There's actually this great thing, I'll have to find it out, but there's this AI site called What Would Tequila Do? And depending on your mood, you can plug it in and it'll write your message for you in the tone of the thing. I'll try to share the link at some point, but it's fun anyway. Okay, because we are getting on in time here, I just do want to get through a couple of things. The joint execution plans, short version here is if you have a shared document with timing and steps, it will help you control the sales process. The one key thing to build in here that I like is put in the times when the executives are going to connect. Every 2 weeks, 10-minute executive check-in. It helps you build that executive alignment. And it also should continue until the project is implemented and running and showing value. Okay, so random tactics. I couldn't figure out how to put these into a flow, so I'm just going to hit them. And be transparent. There's a book, Todd Caponi, called The Transparency Sale. He has research that shows that if you get in front of your limitations, you build credibility and your win rates increase. So don't try to hide from the things that you can't do. Get out in front of it. It builds credibility with the customer. No assumptions. My sales teams know if they're getting on a forecast call with me and I say, who owns the budget for this? And they say, I think it's, they get cut off immediately. There is no I think. It has to be a fact that we've heard from the customer's mouth. I think is waving that red blanket in front of the bull for me. Whenever I think, you got to have the facts. This one is awesome. Proposals. Never 3, only 2. And this comes from, I heard it on a Simon Sinek podcast. It's about this shoe salesman in Los Angeles called Ben Prober, who was like the shoe sales genius. And basically what he's doing is preventing decision fatigue. So he has a client, and the client looks at one pair of shoes and looks at another pair of shoes and says, I'd really like to look at those shoes. His response was, okay, I can get those for you. Which one would you like me to take away first? He eliminates the third thing. And what he found was he was selling way more because the decision is this or that, instead of I have 3 things and now I have to decide, and I have cognitive fatigue and overload and I can't make a decision and I don't buy anything. It's huge. I promise you it's effective. Okay, in the chat, please. When a customer says jump, what do you say? Come on. Thank you. Wrong. When the customer says jump, there is no better time to ask for something. When someone asks you for something, that is the best time to ask for something in return. I've heard it called a give-get. You should prepare this in advance. You know the customer's going to ask you for a demo. What are you going to ask for in return? The customer says, hey, can we do a demo of this? Yeah, sure, I'd love to do that. I got to pull my lead engineer off another project to do this for you, and we're going to take a little time to prep. Hey, do you think we could get your boss in the session too? That's what you do when someone asks you to do something. And there's some nuances. Decide ahead of time. What's a pilot worth? What's a demo worth? What's a meeting with your CEO worth? Or you, the founder. Never have a concession without asking for something in return. It's important, right? It erodes your position. If you're just giving, you have no power. Opening meetings. You heard me do it at the beginning of the session. Ask for permission to proceed. So should we get started? Because the minute they say yes, they are more open to hearing what you have to say. Price anchoring. Start high. It's scary, but you can always come down. And if you start low, you can't go up. And if you start at $1 million and you settle at 500, that person thinks they got an amazing deal. Like these 2 characters here, one started $1 million, she got the deal for 500, she thinks she got an amazing deal. This guy started at 550 and he got like a 10%, whatever that is, discount, and he's miserable. Okay, so, and if you set the price high and they think it's too high and they really want your solution, they'll tell you. You don't need to be afraid of that. Okay, pilot success very quickly. The reality is you've got to do them. You probably have a new product category. You're going to have to prove it. You need to establish logos, especially if you're in the product market fit phase. A strategy I've used in the past with my teams is when a customer says, can we do a pilot? We say, we don't do pilots. What we do is a full production rollout in a limited scope so that you can see what it's like to get with our solution working in a production environment with our production team and on your true business metrics or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I named it an initial value engagement. Just a thought. There are 4 elements you have to have. First is binary success criteria. A good one. Did the solution show that it could autonomously make a dinner reservation at Canoe, Toronto restaurant, within a 3-day range of the target date? Yes or no? It's binary, 1 or 0. That's good. Bad, was the solution easy to use? It's debatable, it's too easy to wiggle out of. Executive alignment. We need to have the person engaged who is making the decision and funding the thing. And executive to executive, and it doesn't have to be a big deal, 10-minute conversation so that we know that executive has their eyes on this thing. Because if they don't, it could be just some person running a pilot at your expense. The joint execution plan, which we've talked about, executive check-ins, milestone reviews. So halfway through the thing, have we shown any of these success criteria? Yes, okay, let's get rid of them. We don't need to talk about them anymore. And a fee. I am adamant about this. I don't care if it's $500 or $25,000, but when someone has to write a check, it has to go through the process and somebody's going to see it and somebody's going to ask why. It matters. And you're devoting time to this. There is an argument. From time to time, you may have to give it away for free, but I don't care. I just want them to write a check. And if it's $500, that's fine with me. I'd rather it be $25,000, but that's better. And bonus, when you're doing the contract for the pilot, use your main contract like as if they're buying the permanent solution and just give them an opt-out. So you've already done all the paperwork, you've done all the things, so if they don't opt out, you're in. Versus you finish the pilot, then you have to negotiate another contract for the long-term thing. So I wish we had more time. There's a whole bunch of lists of things that I got to go through. I'd love to go through with you. Some key takeaways: curiosity. Please develop your curiosity. That will be the number one thing that you can do. Shift your focus from you, the technical founder trap, to them. Connect to their priorities and focus on the opportunity you create. By solving these problems, you create an opportunity for their business. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome, David. Yeah, there were a bunch of questions that came in that we didn't get a chance to go into, but that's okay. If you could flip to the last slide with our contact information. Oh, there's links as well. Again, just to remind everyone, we will make this recording as well as the slides available, hopefully by sometime tomorrow after we process everything. You'll be able to get the links to the different resources. If you could flip to the last slide, David, I think we
I
still
want
have
to
it.
know, Dan Salazar, what was the dirty trick? Sorry, was
Oh,
there another
I think it was about your jump, asking you to jump.
I don't know what other slide.
Yeah, no, that was it. I remember him saying that.
Okay.
Okay, is this the final slide on our deck?
Yeah, I think that's it. I had a whole bunch of other topics if we had time, but
Okay.
I went
All
over
right.
time.
Well, so we're up on time. Unfortunately, we can't address every single question. If you are a Mucker portfolio company, you're in luck because, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this session, David is one of our operating experts in the Operating Experts program. So you could reach out to him and get some one-on-one advice. That's part of the deal with being an expert, operating expert in our program. If you are not a Mucker portfolio company, David's kind enough to provide his information here. So definitely reach out to him if you have some burning follow-up questions that we didn't get to address. It's
Uh,
not shown on the slide here, but if you want to cover any additional topics, we do these sessions again every month, specifically for founders to help you founders and people who work in early stage startups grow, covering topics like how to do enterprise sales well. If there are any topics that you want us to cover, or want to give us some ideas, definitely shoot an email to either myself, just Tony, Tony, at mucker.com, or my colleague Justin, just Justin. He's also on the call as well. Just shoot an email over to us. Again, if you guys are founders and looking for help, definitely go to mucker.com. We have a lot of great resources as well on the Mucker blog for free, including this, which will go up in another day or so.